Jeff.
It's work
Good
in progress.
morning. Welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. Sorry we're late, but we were talking about dinosaurs and chickens and the concept of warm-blooded or not. And Jeff was showing us a piece of art he did. So I'm going to turn on the chat so you guys can hear our. That's interesting. Okay, there we go. It took a second for the people to show up. So good morning, all of y'all, and Tom. I'm just going to say thanks for being here to host the second Sunday, and I'm going to go read the rest of what's going on and leave you to introduce us to your guests.
All right. Well, this time we've got two very well-known and very good science fiction artists, science fiction and fantasy artists, to sit and talk about art, the careers in art, the nature of art, and anything else that happens to come up. I'm going to let each of them say a lot about their own background, but we have Jeff Sturgeon and Todd Lockwood, and I've known Jeff for more than 50 years now, and Todd I don't know particularly well at all. So I want to hear what you both have to say about who you are and what you're doing here.
Go first, Todd.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm Todd Lockwood. I'm an illustrator and author. You might know me best from my Dungeons and Dragons work, or my Magic the Gathering work, or book covers for an endless string of authors, C.J. Cherry, R.A. Salvatore, on down. I have a novel out called The Summer Dragon that did very well, got great reviews. I just turned the sequel into my editor, and hopefully that will come down the pike soon. Meanwhile, I'm just hanging out trying to do what I want to do.
and show the audience your Tyrannosaur.
Oh, all right. I believe it's actually maybe it is a Tyrannosaur. He's got little arms. I thought he was an Allosaur, but
it could be. Oh. It's not enough detail. Yes.
Yeah, I just saw this in the grocery store yesterday. We're in a food aisle where it didn't belong, and I thought, oh, that guy's looking for a home.
Yeah, well, he's not food. You are.
Actually, he is my servant. He sits on my desktop and holds my glasses when I switch glasses to him.
So, Jeff,
yeah,
a little bit about you.
I'm Jeff Sturgeon. I'm an illustrator, author, longtime professional artist. I did computer games way back when for many, many years. I came up through the fan ranks back in the 80s. I've known Tom forever. It seems like we go way back to fanish days. I'm a book cover illustrator. I've done a lot of conventions around the country, lots of appearances, lots of book covers like Todd, magazine covers, illustrations. I'm the creator of a shared world I created called Jeff Sturgeon's Last Cities of Earth, with a lot of great authors writing stories in a world that I've created, which is an ongoing project as we work on our second anthology. And I have my art book coming out here in the next month or so, which has been in the works for the last 2 years as we get files and commentary from various people so we can get this book out, which is a big deal. And we have NorwestCon coming up in a few days, which I'm getting art ready for. So, like Todd, very busy.
Well, thank you both for taking time to sit and chat with me and tell us a little more about stuff. Who's publishing your book, Jeff?
E-Spec Books, which is on the East Coast. They're Danielle McPhail is who Todd knows is compiling the files and putting the book together, and we'll be publishing through them. Of course, I'll have it myself as well.
Mhm.
But yeah,
If you put a URL in the private chat for the publisher, then it can be put in the general chat by Bob. So
okay,
everyone can get a chance to look at it. I mean, it is true that this is not mostly a marketing conversation, but we're going to slip some marketing in.
sure.
I don't have a field to type a message into the chat, the public
Okay,
chat.
you can't type it into the public chat, but if you type it into the private chat, which is a little box down the
Yeah, I see
bottom,
that now. Yeah,
you can send it to Bob, and Bob will put it in the public chat.
gotcha. All right.
So yeah, to a great extent, we're marketing for B Cubed Press, but we also market for ourselves. I don't have anything to sell, so other than a few rare books, which I sell on Biblio. But what makes what is it you love doing in artwork? Why do you do it?
Why do we do it?
Yeah.
Because I can't throw a football.
Well,
I'm sure you can, but you can't do it at the same level. What got you into doing artwork?
I've been holding a pencil since I can remember. There was never a time in my life when I wasn't doing art.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just kind of followed. And my parents were both aspiring or frustrated or wannabe artists. One was a homemaker and the other was a civil engineer, but they were both artistic. So I got a lot of encouragement from them.
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid who could draw a little bit, was in the comics quite a bit back in the 60s, but unlike Todd, I got away from it. And junior high and high school, I was an athlete pursuing various athletic endeavors. I played college football, and art came a little bit later for me, really. I got involved with a Dungeons and Dragons group in the late 70s. Todd smiling. We've had long talks about this, where it hit that creative switch in my brain, and I started drawing characters and monsters and populating my own world that I created with the stuff coming out of my head, and started going to conventions in the early 80s. Of course, in the late 70s, I met Tom at conventions in the Bay Area.
Actually,
before
Jeff,
that,
it was well before that. We were working on conventions together in 1970.
I know, right? I forgot. So
were you kids?
Yeah. We were in school.
It was prenatal.
And
of course it was.
Came up through the ranks as a fan artist, and eventually turned pro. And by that point, I don't know. You get, for me, I would get images or ideas in my head, and I had to get them out, and painting them or drawing them or writing them were ways to do that. Obviously, kind of you had no choice in the matter, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean, my favorite thing as a kid was fiction, whether it was a great TV show, a great movie, a comic book, or the stories I was making up, or drawing or writing. That's what I'd get home from school, drop my books on the floor, and get out some paper and start drawing or writing.
Mm-hmm.
I learned to draw and write by making my own comic books. So, I was exploring storytelling from an early age.
Mm-hmm. George Barr once famously said to me, the way to become an artist is to draw everything you see for 10 years. And that really is the only way to do it, I think.
Yeah, well, time at the boards. They say you have to spend a decade with your medium before you're an artist.
At least.
Or or you have
That
to write a
leads-
million words before you're a writer, that kind of thing. That's totally it. My first convention that I went to, unlike you guys, I started late. It was the Worldcon in Winnipeg in '94.
Oh yeah.
And I hung some artwork. Actually, it was the second convention that I went to, which was Dragon Con, where I hung some work, and nobody knew me then, so I would just hang around my booth and eavesdrop on people talking about my work. And I heard Rick Berry looking at it, and he said, "Where'd this guy come from? He's got some chops. He just appeared overnight." And I thought, yeah, overnight. It took me 37 years to appear overnight.
Yep. Yes. Well, instant success takes decades.
Right.
Right. Right. You know, I get the comment, which I don't like, is, you know, you're so talented. Well, how many times I've heard that, and which is flattering, but you know, it's not so much. If I have a talent, it's my imagination.
Right.
The skill level that I've gotten to is, you know, 10,000 hours of painting or whatever. You know, it's just a lot of hard work to get to a point like any other job or work.
I credit my ADD and OCD to any skill that I have. Anyone who knows my work knows that I'm not afraid of detail, lots of detail. It's a curse also, but I don't know, it's the way I see, you know, I tend to see everything holistically and in detail.
One of my favorite aphorists is a fellow named Pete Hine, who wrote poems called Grooks, and he has a poem about artwork, which says I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember it precisely. There are two things about artwork that he can't understand. One is, how do the artists make the things they make so flawless? The other, why does it take them so much energy and time?
It depends on the deadline.
Two ideas trying to come together, but
yeah. He was a mathematician and a poet, an aphorist, and he lived in Denmark and wrote generally in Danish, but he wrote these poems in English to teach himself English.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
Huh.
And illustrated them with these very cute little line drawings. I should have pulled out the book, you know, to get it to show you all. But
here's a question for Todd. I've known Todd for forever as well, it seems like, and we've had a lot of conversations about art, but I don't think I've ever asked you this, Todd. Do you spend more time on something personal than a deadline illustration for a cover?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When it's personal, it's more a reflection of you. You know, when you're doing a cover for someone else's book, it's their characters, it's their story, and I can put a little bit of me into it and give them my best effort, but I'm not nearly as invested in that as I am in doing the artwork of the cover for my own novel. So,
right. You know, I try to make sure I'm a perfectionist. I can't let the art go out the window or out the door without it being satisfactory to me.
Yeah.
But working on something, you know, personal, I don't know, maybe a little bit more of energy goes into that. I'm not sure. Something happens that's a little bit different.
Is there a means of screen sharing in this app?
I believe there is, but I think Bob has to manipulate things to make that happen. So we'll put the note into his head and see what we can figure out. But it's an interesting thing to think about, because computers as a tool date well after both of you are starting to do artwork.
Right.
You know, and I know that, Jeff, with the stuff you were doing for computer games, many of which were sports related. So there's that in your
Well, that's a weird thing because I was a science fiction and fantasy, you know, artist, illustrator, but I was in that first wave of computer game artists hired in 1990, the late 80s. They decided to bring in artists and show them how to use art programs to create games instead of the the programmers and producers doing their own crappy ping art,
The 8-bit
Pong
game
art.
art.
And I was an athlete. I played lettered in multiple sports in high school and played college ball. And these programmers and producers were total nerds and geeks and didn't even know what end of a football to throw, let alone do sports games. So I got pigeonholed into doing sports games while I painted science fiction stuff for art shows all up through the 90s. But yeah, I did a lot of sports games, a lot over a 12-year period.
And I was doing advertising at that point in time.
Yeah, painting dewdrops on beer cans.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If I painted more of anything than anything else, it's dewdrops on beer cans. I painted a lot of silver bullets flying for Coors because they were the big fish in the little pond. I lived in the Denver area. That's what I did through the 80s and early 90s was advertising and dewdrops. I painted more dewdrops than dragons, if you can imagine.
Well, Don Mates's probably most famous pieces are the Captain Morgan's rum ads.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and it's weird to see some of your my favorite artists end up doing ads. Kelly Freas did a bunch of he created Alfred E. Newman for Mad.
Right. Right. Kelly was an amazing guy.
Yeah.
He was one of my mentors early on.
He was also really nice and really supportive of people in a whole lot of different ways. It's I miss him too.
Yeah. I was very.
I only met him once, and it was late. It was at a Worldcon.
Mm-hmm.
We had desks side by side where we were selling prints and whatnot. So that would have been like probably 96-ish, 95.
Yeah, that sounds. He was.
It seemed like a sweetheart.
Really fanish. He liked fans.
He did. He, it's in our world, I guess you could say, science fiction world as artists, it's passing on to that next generation of what we've learned and encouragement and how to go about having a career as an artist. And Kelly was famous for that. He would, if you were an artist and came up to him, he would spend a lot of time talking to you and encouraging you and inspiring you.
That's a good question. For me, the guy that was the first to kind of take me under his wing and introduce me to people and so on was Ron Wolotsky. And I miss him dearly. I always felt like in my early days of conventions, if I found Ron and Gail at a desk somewhere, then it felt like, okay, this convention will be good. I have a couple of friends here. And he was always very supportive.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Miss him too.
Yeah. Well, as an art appreciator, I started hanging out with Spanish artists back in the 70s, and Tim Kirk and George Barr and Alicia Austin were always people who I found just great to hang with.
Yeah,
I got to hang with Tim Kirk eventually when he was well out of fantasy art, but of course I remembered his Tolkien calendars, and he's doing design for Disney theme parks, or he was when I met him, and found him to be a really enjoyable guy.
I'm good friends with Tim and talk to him quite a bit. Yeah,
and he's doing museum curation now as well. museum design.
He is he's the artist guest of honor next year at Worldcon in LA.
Yeah, somebody who's long deserved it. It's kind of amazing
Oh
taking
yeah,
this long for. Well, he did go away for quite a while, but he
he
also did greeting cards for Hallmark.
Yeah, there's your advertising, right?
Yeah.
He won several Hugos as a fan
Yep.
artist back in the
Yep.
70s.
Yep.
Well,
Speaking of George
his
Barr,
calendar art was
another
a college thesis, was it not?
Yeah,
right.
and it was an MFA thesis. He displayed them at the first convention I went to, which was Baycon in 1968.
Hmm.
And I was impressed by the stuff at the time. You know.
Well, him and George and Alicia, they were pretty tight back
Yeah.
then.
And all good friends of Bejo Trimble, who was the woman who saved Star
Right.
Trek, and
And her husband.
and her husband John, and they're the people who really started art shows at conventions as a way for artists to sell them rather than just having stuff
Yep.
shown. Before them, they did a fanzine called Project Pastel for Project Art Show, and they really Bejo's the person I know who changed fandom twice, once through art shows and once through the Save Star Trek campaign.
Star Trek, yeah. Yeah, I was in several shows that her and John, managed back in the day. Speaking of fanzines, I did a lot of art for fanzines back in the day, coming up through fandom. Art Widner.
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure Tom knows art.
Yeah.
I still feel like a real outsider hearing you guys talk about stuff that goes back that far. I discovered conventions late, or I wouldn't have stuck around advertising as long as I did. I had no idea that there was such a thing as conventions until I had gotten a couple of covers for Asimov's magazine in the early 90s. I asked the art director, how do I get more work like this? She said, hang a show at a science fiction fantasy convention. I said, what is that? I had no idea. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, it's where I grew up, science fiction conventions.
Yeah. Well, I hit the ground running. Within 2 years, I was hired by TSR. So, but it was one of those aha things. Like, wait a minute, these are my people. Where has this been all my life? These are all the friends I wished I had in junior high and high school.
Well, better late than never.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And that was 30 years ago. So you've been at it a while.
Yeah.
I remember standing in front of, I remember going to Octocon in 1980. And, Harlan Ellison was there, and Theodore Sturgeon, who I got to sit and talk with for quite a while, which was a big high point for me, talking about family and stuff like that. And Frank Herbert was there, and
Phil Dick,
etc. But I remember Philip K. Dick was there.
One of the
I
few
assume you
conventions
were there, Tom.
I was there. Yeah.
And I remember standing. I had a couple of pieces in the art show which were really bad pieces of art looking back, but Rick Sternbach was the artist guest of honor.
Oh yeah.
And I remember standing there watching him work on a space painting in the show, which completely blew my mind and imprinted on me heavily that, like, okay, I really want to pursue this, and especially space and science fiction art in particular.
Well, he's another one of those people who was very supportive of other artists.
Well, he became my main mentor, and he's a dear friend now. I've known him forever as well. But Rick, oh yeah, I talked to him quite a bit as well.
I think that we all.
It's the thing about. The thing about being in this business and this community is, especially the better well-known fans and us professionals, writers and artists, we've all gotten to know each other.
Mhm.
Networking without networking, in a way, I guess you could say.
Well-
Very, very community oriented.
Well, Chip Delaney, who I had on here in the essay that nobody talks about in Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, everyone talks about the essay that's about his life in the porn theaters in New York. He has another essay in there, which is about why networking doesn't work and what works instead. And his thesis was that networking doesn't work because you're competing for a scarce resource. You're competing to meet the person who will take you to a place. What works is contact, finding the people who are doing what you want, doing what you like, doing
Well,
that,
that's how you
connecting
network.
with them. You know, that's not what people mean when they talk about networking usually. They're talking
Right.
about working the room and getting to meet everybody and, you know, finding the person you can exploit to get you further. Much more fun is to find the people who you really like being with and then hang out with them, and they'll help you in
Well, my
ways you never
couple
expect.
of years of conventions, I had a fanny pack full of business cards and a notebook and a pen, and I went to every party I could get myself into and just
Mhm.
met as many people as I could. But it's
Yeah.
the friends that you make in the process that are your network. And, you
Mhm.
know, financially, we're other artists and sometimes writers and
Mhm.
art directors. So, yeah,
Yeah, your word gets passed around. Jeff so and so you might be able to do a cover for them, or
right.
Todd, you might be able to do a cover for them, and then you have writers coming up to you to talk to you about art.
Mhm.
And it's not even really. It's almost not like business. It's just, I don't know, communicating and making friends.
Well, you
Sure.
build a life that way,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's the way we build our whole lives, not just art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
True.
You know, and looking back, it looks as if there's a path you followed, but while you're in the middle of it, you know, you can't see it.
Sure.
As the famous sage Donovan said, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. You know, you start walking up the mountain. You can't tell you're on a mountain when you're doing it, other than you're going up. When you get to the top, you can see it. When you're 10 miles away from it, you can see it. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't.
Right. Yeah, deep in the forest.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, certainly blind mailing portfolios to art directors is no way to get noticed. I always
No.
told people back in the day, go to a convention, hang some art in the show, and meet people.
Mhm.
Those blind mailings are worthless. When I was working at TSR, the design director, John Shendahedi, had a table outside his office that had a stack of portfolios on it, waiting for him to get around to looking at them. And it being Magic the Gathering and D&D, of course, that pile of portfolios was tall. And sometimes if I was in that part of the building, I'd take a few and look at them. And there was some good stuff. I did notice one thing, that the quality of the art had an inverse relationship to the size and nudity of the breasts in the art.
Yeah. There are an awful lot of people who think that that's the way you get attention, but
Well, it worked for Frazetta.
yeah, well,
True.
actually, he had a really good sense of sketching. You know,
Oh, yeah.
he could build figures with a great deal of action in them.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
He's
Back
one
when he
of
was
my
working in black
art
and white.
fathers.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
like my
some artists, they might be good technically, but their work's a little static. Frank never had that issue.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Frazetta's like my left brain art father, all action and energy and emotion.
Mhm.
And Michael Whalen was my right brain art father, thoughtful and scientific and considered, and
I
a
think
lot of
Michael,
And,
intellectual depth.
I think
and
Michael was a
also
big part of all of us.
mhm, very photorealistic too.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a thought back in the early days of photography that it would destroy artwork
Hmm.
because you
Wow.
could actually get a real representation of things. But it turned into a medium that became an
It
expense.
liberated art
Yeah.
because suddenly
Uh,
you didn't have to pursue photorealism any longer. You could pursue the idea
it,
inside the art.
yeah. It could be done so much more realistically than a human possibly could that
Yeah. So,
you didn't
so
need to go
convey,
there.
yeah, convey something else,
Mhm.
not the detail.
Yeah.
How
It's no
often do you
surprise.
look at a photorealistic piece of artwork and think to yourself, well, yeah, but he's just copying a photo.
Yeah. Except that often it's a photograph of a thing that couldn't exist in
Right.
our
Right,
field,
right.
giving you the sense of, wow, maybe I could have been there when this happened, even though it couldn't have happened.
Well, yeah, when you're talking about painting things that can't be photographed, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, that's a big part of, science fiction, right?
That's what we
Go
do.
someplace where you can't go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Imagine something that is not real or
Is only potentially real.
potentially real,
And
maybe.
it's an interesting question because there are not that many science fiction as opposed to fantasy artists who um, have written books.
Hmm.
There are a lot more artists, including artists who do a lot of hard science stuff, like Ron Miller, who have done fantasy novels. In fact, there's one author I can think of who was a science fiction as well as fantasy author who did covers for his own books, and that's Greg Bear.
I was
Oh,
going to say Greg Bear.
Yeah. Um, there are like 20 or 30 fantasy writers, including Tolkien, Mervyn Peake, Michael Ayrton, some really famous, well-known artists who did covers for their books, but they didn't do it for science fiction.
huh.
And I sort of wonder why.
Well, it's interesting because I grew up on science fiction, but I got a career in this industry painting fantasy.
Mhm.
And the world of my novels is ostensibly fantasy because it has dragons in it,
Mhm.
but in my mind, it's more science fiction because I'm not doing a lot of hand waving, not a lot of woo
Mhm.
woo magic. It's people stories, and I try to employ real physics in the action of things. That's the way we designed the dragons, Sam Wood and I, for D&D. Was we started with the muscles and the skeleton, and then built out from there. They had to make sense as living, breathing, viable
Mhm.
creatures. They couldn't be a T-Rex with cocktail umbrellas stuck in the side for wings, like the
Yep.
reluctant dragon.
Mhm.
Nothing's more offensive than a dragon with great big thunder thighs and itty bitty little wings.
Mhm.
It's just not
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh,
I do a lot of space art going back to Rick Sternbach, who had such a big influence on me. And, I'm a member of the International Astronomical Artists Association, which also has a lot of scientists in it, astronauts, besides us space artists. And if I'm probably one of the few people you will see in an art show with just plain space art, where there used to be a lot more of that,
mhm.
kind of gone on the
Mhm.
wane. But I still do a lot of it. And having been taught by guys like Ron Miller and Rick Sternbach and Dave Hardy,
Mhm.
Joel Hagen, you've got to have it's got to be correct. That light source has to be correct. It has to it just has to be done a certain way to be come across as what it would normally or what it would
Yeah.
look like potentially.
Chesley Bonestell was, of course, the
Oh, yeah.
grandfather on that. And Don
Absolutely.
Davis did. some
Yeah, Don
really
Davis, Don Dixon.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
And
that's just
that, of
like
course, leads into Dougal Dixon and Bonnie Dalzell as people who drew animals that were anatomically well designed. Bonnie was a zoologist who actually did an exhibition for the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum of 3 different planets with 3 different gravity size and 3 different environments, and designed 27 different animals,
wow.
one for one of each. And there's an article in Smithsonian Magazine about what she did with that.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
But she ended up not getting her PhD after all, and went off and became a borzoi raiser. Because she was
What?
a raiser of Russian wolfhounds.
Oh, okay. I heard boy toy razors.
Borzoi. Borzoi.
Borzoi. That's way different than a boy toy.
Yeah.
You know, we brought up a little bit ago about authors doing their own covers, or Todd and I, you know, we've had a long career doing this stuff, but it came to a point where, because we're old D&D guys with our own creative worlds that we had done way back when, that we had stories to tell besides just being a gunslinger doing artwork for somebody else. We wanted to create our own worlds, which is what led him to do his novel, and for me to create this shared world that I've done. Something more than just doing artwork. We had other stuff to pursue, still pursuing the literary side of things.
Yep. Have you, by the way, Todd, have you read Peter Dickinson's The Flight of Dragons?
No, I have not. And at the time that I started writing my dragon set series, I felt like I should probably not read other people's dragon stories, because I didn't want to cross any streams or discover that anything that I was doing had already been done by somebody, for fear of backing off of my own vision, you know.
Right.
So it's one of those that I need to read. I've never read the Pern books for the same reason.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The Flight of Dragons is interesting because it's a pseudo nonfiction book about how dragons could have existed and why there aren't fossils of them, and how they could fly, all that sort of thing, done with a real ear to the scientific possibilities.
Right. I've seen the book.
Yeah, illustrated by a British author. I have a copy over on the shelf there that I could go pull out. Give me just a second. Yes. There. Wayne Anderson.
Right.
Oh, Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got all the diagrams of how one could evolve a dragon.
Sure. That's funny.
Where they come from. It's a wonderful book.
I did a cover for Marie Brennan that showed the stages of evolution of a dragon. Let's see if I can find that and post it in the chat.
But
yeah, go ahead.
Dickinson is just one of the great authors of the 20th century that is almost completely forgotten, and never got the attention he deserved, because he wrote everything, you know, mystery, science fiction, all of that. And it's just, to my mind, completely under-recognized. His great skill was to write from a different point of view in each novel, which doesn't sound like much. It sounds like what everyone's supposed to do, but he really does. You know, one of his protagonists is blind, He writes a young adult book from the point of view of someone who's blind.
That's
Another one is someone who's really not very intelligent. And Dickinson was clearly really intelligent, but to be able to write.
That's a really difficult thing to do, the unreliable narrator.
It's not even unreliable. It's, because what he tells you is completely reliable. It's just wrong.
His understanding is wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it when that happens.
That's interesting that he would be pursuing those, going down those avenues.
But yeah, he's one of those authors. I couldn't get into him for a very long time, but he did a book called King and Joker, where there are two viewpoint characters, one of whom is bedridden and almost unable to move, but can move her hand and do a few things, and a lot takes place in her head. And the other is the princess in the British royal family. And the nurse is who raised her, and 3 generations is the person in bed. He's an amazing writer. Yeah. So
Sorry,
I want to
bring
up the the elephant in the room around art at the moment.
Oh,
yeah. We talked about a little bit before we started getting on here, which is AI and how that is being used and how it might be used, and what is it that would make AI a tool, and what is it that makes it an exploitation device, and how is it each of those, and how do we learn to deal with it within?
Most artists are familiar with what AI is doing to the industry and how it has scraped without permission the art of anybody who's ever posted anything online of their art in order to create the models. And that's exploitation for sure. I ran into a guy at MISCON who was trying, and I haven't ever heard back from him, so I don't know how this is going, but he was trying to create an AI program in which you could input your own art and then have it scrape yourself to help you with like ideation or sketches or concept. And that's a way that AI might be useful without being exploited. But I haven't seen anything like that come to fruition yet.
No.
There's probably no market for it. I mean, I would be interested because I work digitally, but when I say I work digitally, I mean, I put a stylus on a pad and then I draw or I paint. The only difference is that the ink or the pigment is digital. It doesn't come out of a tube, but I'm not using 3D programs. I'm not using like Poser, for example. I'm still doing it the way I always did it. I'm just not scraping palettes clean at the end of the day or washing brushes, which are the two of the things about traditional art that I really don't miss. The only thing I miss is paintings. The physical object at the end.
Right.
But, AI can't do anything for me. But it can still work for me, which I feel like it is doing.
How is it working for you?
What working for me?
AI. You were saying AI.
It's not working for me at all. It's not doing anything for me. No, I have no contact with it. I have no desire to use it because I don't want to exploit someone else's work. And I spent my entire life scraping the world, so to speak, to create my own algorithm. It comes out of my head and out of my hand.
No, to me, it's just pure theft. I mean, and whether you're an artist or a musician or an author, I mean, the idea of typing a paragraph and having AI take off and write a novel for you, that is...
It's disgusting.
It is. It is.
Yeah, well,
Or sort of,
Soulless.
write a paragraph about an art cover, idea, and then have it created for you. I mean, what's the world coming to with that kind of crap for a
Well,
creative
look at what the world's coming to.
period?
It's all exploitative.
well, in some ways, it always has been.
Sure, but it's really ramping up.
Mhm. So, would you say that we lived through the golden age?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're now, B Cubed Press exists because people are upset with where things are going.
Mm-hmm.
Karen comments that Bob almost created the near future political dystopia short story.
Mm.
He certainly provided one of the first major markets for it.
Yeah.
And we're getting new dystopias in so many ways.
Daily.
Yeah. Just,
You wake up and look at the news and think, oh my God, what's happened today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now what'd he do?
mm-hmm. Yes, well, we could try and move on to something a little happier.
Yeah.
Sure.
Bob actually warned us away from AI, and I get it because it can become very polarizing really quick.
Yeah.
And you really don't want to see us angry.
Yeah. Well, historically, the ability of artists / jesters / writers to poke holes in dystopias is one of the few things that's gotten us away from them.
Yeah. And honestly, the only time I feel okay about AI art is if it's an immediate and pointed political commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's usually derived from photographs, and so it's not necessarily stealing someone's art, but it's commentary. And even though I have a baseline objection to AI art, if it's lampooning something important, I might give it a pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I do think that there are a few people who are learning how to use the algorithms that AI art is playing with, who are doing some things that are actually original and artistic.
I think it comes to that eventually.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. The definition of artist changes when that happens.
It's putting people like us out of business.
Yeah, but at the moment, people are using it stupidly. That's really the problem. Is people, I think, using it in ways that cut out the possibilities rather than expanding them.
Right.
Limit.
Well, it's always going to be a distillation of stuff that's already been done.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't say that we don't do that too,
Yeah.
because we have our influences and we're deriving our work from our life's experiences, which are behind us. But they're not. Are they adding anything that hasn't already been added? Does that make sense? I don't know.
And in an awful lot of cases, people who are doing normal art in their first 10 years don't add anything new.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're all the sum of our influences.
Yeah. And artificial intelligence is so new that it's easy to see it as being incredibly derivative. And do you think that there's hope for it actually becoming creative, or do you think it's always going to remain just where it is?
Oh, somebody will find a way to be creative with it, I'm sure.
Well, they better hurry up.
know, I
That's
think about
another
that
problem.
line, that old,
That's another
old
problem we
saying,
deal
do
with
you
now.
want it fast, good, or cheap? And with AI art, it's like, why not fast and cheap?
I just like it
Well,
currently at the moment.
you
So
can have it fast and cheap, but you don't have it good.
Exactly. That's my
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
it's definitely
Well, there's Bob.
a lazy way of doing things, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and cheap.
Hey,
There's Bob
lazy.
showing up. Speaking of lazy and cheap, there's Bob. Oh, wait.
Hey, I'm a firm believer that lazy people have sometimes done some of the greatest creative work in the world. You know,
I'm an
the
extraordinarily lazy person when I'm not being OCD.
oh, lazy and OCD. Talk about a conflicting world.
I
I
know.
mean, I want to take a nap, but I feel this urge to create. Okay.
Here's another side thing to add to that. Speaking about lazy, half the work is done in our heads, where we're sitting staring
Mhm.
off into nothing. Is that
At
being
least
lazy, or is that our brain working hard to come up with that next painting or story? Where we're just sitting around, not doing anything, but our brains are incredibly active. I think a lot of people don't understand that process of things, what's going on in our heads.
Mhm.
when I
Oh God,
started at
yeah.
when I started at TSR, I would watch Jeff Easley paint. He was one of my favorite D&D artists. And to have the opportunity to watch him paint was amazing. And I'd work on my own piece and I'd be drawing and painting, and I'd get up and I'd go over to Jeff's desk, and he'd just be sitting with his arms crossed and his chair back like this, and he's just rocking and staring at his canvas, and he's just got the barest pencil sketch there, and he's just staring at it. And I'd go back to work for an hour, and I'd come back and peek over his shoulder, and same thing, just staring at his canvas. I'd get up an hour later, go to the bathroom, come back, and the painting's half done. Because the whole time he was practicing the painting in his head.
Mhm.
He gave himself a dry run in his head, and then he went to work. He plotted his approach and his strategy and his palette, and he figured out all that stuff.
I'm the same. I see my paintings in my head before I start them. I mean, there might be changes along the way, but for the most part, I see it already done. And then I just try to duplicate it, what I see.
Mhm.
So I'm exactly the same way. I'll stare at
One of the most
forever sometimes, or a piece of aluminum in particular. So I
Mhm.
grind on aluminum and then paint, and the patterns often dictate what's going to come out of that. I have to look at it for a while.
I'm the same to a degree, but when something is super detailed, it just takes time to develop. Like, I don't know if anyone saw the link to the cover from my next book, but I've been working on that drawing for a long time, trying to get all the movement right and the relationships correct.
Yeah,
To
I think,
me,
I'll have a sketch of a cover or whatever, and I'll have notes all around the edges on the perimeter of it, the palette, the color, the light source. It's problem solving is how I look at
Mhm.
it.
but in a really detailed painting, a lot of the problem solving has to happen with a pencil and an eraser.
Absolutely.
I
Mhm.
feel,
But you don't want to be
I
doing
feel
that
like
on the painting. You want to have all that
no,
figured out.
I feel like 95% of the work in a good painting is the drawing,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
and then the paint is just color. It's just adding color.
I tell a lot of young artists that, figure it out on that pencil. You don't want to be doing that while you're painting. You want to have all that
Mhm.
figured out.
Yeah.
The slight counter to that, which is something that I've never really been able to understand, is how Leo and Diane Dillon worked.
Oh,
Because apparently one of them would start out a painting and then go away, and the other one would come and start painting on it more, and then they'd just alternate back and forth in a
I,
true collaboration, which is Just
I've
bizarre to me.
mused sometimes what it would have been like to find that perfect artistic partner that you could do that with.
Well, the
Or have an
Hildebrandt.
excellent Hildebrandt, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hildebrandt. Hi,
But they
Brenda.
were,
Yeah. And both the Hildebrandt and the Dillons were some of the most amazing artists the field has known. Talking about photorealism in the Hildebrandt case and total creativity in every medium they played with.
All right.
I draw a line between realism and photorealism. Because I don't see what the Hildebrandts were doing as photorealism. That was
No.
realism.
Okay, that was realism.
Photorealism
You're more right
is
than I
when you
am.
look at it and you think, is that a photo or a pencil sketch or a pencil drawing, painting even? And that's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your own style and technique come into play, I think.
Yeah.
Bob, you're doing something that's making noise in the background that we're hearing.
I know that was my keyboard.
Yeah. Couldn't figure out what it was, but
Oh, well, it was just something annoying. You guys are all great artists. My master's degree is in being annoying.
I'm
But-
not a great artist. I am so much not a great artist. I just like to talk to people.
Oh, look behind you. Look at the tableau you have prepared for us, and think of it as a static bit of what do you call those art that it's statues with I don't know what you call it. I got a couple on my wall where it's 3D art paintings.
Trump loyal?
Yeah, I mean, look at this tableau Tom's got there. He can't say that he's not an artist.
I can say it. I just did.
I've been to
It
his
is
house.
brilliant.
I've been to his house and Karen's house. The place is a museum of books and art. I mean, you could spend days going through his place, looking at everything.
Yeah, and the giant cage he now has on his back step to take care of his cats.
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah, that's
Actually, you haven't seen the catio. It's new.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Since I was there?
Yeah, it's just in the last month that we built a catio for the new cats we have.
Wow.
No, their place is amazing.
I liked it. I mean, I have got brilliantly designed and laid out chicken coop, but nothing that could compare to what Tom's got in his back door for the cats.
Well, Karen arranged for that rather than me. So,
well, I just assumed that Karen was the person giving the orders. You were the person.
oh no, we had a contractor build it.
Oh,
She was giving him.
so here's a question for you that's political in nature. How's the tariffs impacting your art?
I can give you a direct effect. A friend of mine, Echo Chernick, had kickstarted an art book, and it was on a dock in China waiting to be shipped when the tariffs hit. And suddenly, and this was as of Emerald City Comic Con, which was a month ago or more now. All of a sudden, she has to come up with $15,000 more to pay the tariff to get this product home that was done and she thought paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And those tariffs have only gone up because he keeps hitting China with ridiculous numbers. So who knows how much she has to come up with now, or if she worked something out.
I've talked to her about that. It's just a horrible situation.
It's a horrible situation. And
do you have trouble getting supplies?
Well, it hasn't affected me yet, but it may.
Supplies?
I'm waiting for the price of avocados to skyrocket and bananas and coffee.
Yeah. Well, to the extent that you're working digitally, it's not going to affect that supply, but it might affect the software you could be getting.
It could, yeah. If I have to replace my Mac, it's going to cost an arm, a leg, and a crotch.
Except they've exempted computers and such from the tariffs.
Or have they? Oh,
this week.
This week.
Well, allow me to remind you, if you limit your intake to 1 cup of coffee a day.
I don't.
you will probably not suffer as much.
You just got to have a gallon-sized cup.
What if I've limited my intake to no cups of coffee a day?
No, this is a German cup. It's I got bored one time and sent my wife to Germany with her best friend, and she brought me back this coffee cup.
Is that what you do when you're bored?
Do what?
Is that what you do when you're bored? You send your wife to Germany?
Hey,
I got nothing else to do, honey. Go to Germany.
I mean, she enjoyed it. She got to go. She especially liked it when I got to send her to Paris. It is little old ladies love Europe. It's like designed for them. And she is still talks about the time in the Netherlands where she was at a had a little stairway about this wide that they had to climb up to get to their room, and I always sent her with a friend that a friend of a couple that we were friends with got a divorce, and we got the wife in the settlement. You know, hey, and then she takes to Germany for me. Life's good. But anyway, so we're facing a world right now where if you're an artist, you've got the challenge of tariffs, the perception that you might be political, the AI. Yeah. So,
and the difficulty of traveling from one place to another, as
well, I'm sure you'll get your ID. We see you're not women, though.
Yeah, and we're all white.
Being that you're male, you very likely haven't changed your name when you got married.
Yeah.
That new law that they passed that says that if you've
hasn't passed the Senate yet.
What law?
It's just passed the House. The
SAVE
law.
I believe it is.
The SAVE law.
Yeah.
What's
and then there's another one. Did you see where the House this morning, or it was from yesterday, I'm sorry. Biden had put a ban on, got a ban through on more than $5 overdraft fees to keep banks from raping us. And interestingly enough, I can't imagine, but the Republicans have passed a bill to take that away, so that now overdraft fees can go up and be incredible.
Back to $30. There's also, there's also an attempt to tax credit unions.
Yeah. So when your client's check bounces, you're going to be hit with a lot more money. If it makes you. So anyway, I just thought I'd cheer you guys all up.
All right, goodbye.
Thanks, Bob.
Bob
Guys,
is cheering people up. That's why he publishes the books he does.
Well, Tom, why don't you find out what these guys want to close down with?
Because we finished up our time. So, what is it you'd like to say in final summing up?
Oh dear. Buy art, read books, and don't buy ebooks. Buy paper books. Authors don't make any money off of ebooks. At least I don't. Amazon and Audible are raping me. Buy the real.
Raping everybody.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, stay away from Amazon if you can. At least for the literary stuff.
Yeah. Audible and ebooks. That's why a lot of authors are publishing their own ebooks now. But my publisher has an agreement with Audible and Amazon, and I'm in a pipeline that puts me at the very end. I always used to say artists are at the bottom of the hill the shit rolls down. Seems like authors are too anymore.
Well, that's been true for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
You know, there are very few people who make a living at it, just as there are very few people who make a living as an artist. And
Yeah.
congratulations on both of you, on being able to do so.
I'm not sure I'm making a living as an author yet, unless I get a movie deal or something, but I'm getting by as an artist.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
I will
Jeff, you
say,
have anything to sum up with?
Go to conventions, buy artwork, buy our books,
Follow us.
support authors.
Jeff
You know,
has a
and
Patreon that he's been very active with.
Patreon.
I need to get.
follow me on
I
that.
need to talk to you about Patreon because I have a Patreon and I haven't posted anything new in a long while. And I know I'm leaving money on the table there, but that's like one more job that I have to do.
Well, that's the business side of things, which we don't like so much.
No, and
Especially social media. You got to.
and there's so many
You gotta
hats
do
you
your
have to
updates.
wear on the business side. You got to.
I know. I'd much rather just paint.
sure,
Yeah.
the price of
I want to say
business.
one thing on that too, is some of us collect art, some of us buy art, and eventually we end up selling it. If you sell a piece of art by somebody who's still alive, send them 10%. Send them something that indicates that you know that you wouldn't have this without them. If you make a profit on it, give them some of your profit.
Right. I want to
I do.
respond
Good point.
to Brenda, who just commented that she says we retain rights. I think she means authors. You get one sale of a piece of art, we can sell a book multiple times. If I own copyright on an image, I can sell an image multiple times. That doesn't happen if you're working for a game company, and Wizard of the Coast does not give you rights to your art. They give you some rights. I can sell prints, which they think is magnanimous of them. But I've stopped working for Wizard of the Coast because I just don't want to work for something I don't own any longer. I have enough property.
In the early days, people who worked for Wizards retained all the rights to their artwork.
Oh, yeah, they got royalties.
They got royalties, and they got a license. You know, they sold a license to them rather than selling the artwork to them as work for hire. But they decided that somehow they weren't making enough money off it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Isn't that always the way it is?
Frequently.
One more example.
The money powers.
Yeah. Well, Bob, you do that to your authors?
Do I do what?
Buy all their rights and make sure they don't make any more money off it.
No, they when I buy in the first couple of contracts that we did, you know, because I was a little ignorant of how to do things, we kept it that way. But we had it that way. But the very first major change to our contract we did was that I only retained the rights, or any exclusivity on the rights for 3 months. After that, they are free to have Jeff Sturgeon painted on the back of a narwhal's tusk and sell it online, or anything else they want to have done. But it goes with them. And we do a few other things that I think are right for the writers. We make sure that authors, hey, you want to see the books? Here is the report from Amazon about how many of your books sold. We believe in. I had a really bad publisher one time that bragged that they made more money selling the books back to the authors than they did for promotional.
There's
Than they
something
did
really
selling it
wrong
to the
there.
public. And that pissed me off so bad. I made sure I wrote it into our contracts that authors get to buy their books from me at cost. And that way they want to go promote them, they can go promote them. It's the reality of it is, I mean, I'm not like Todd, who's someday going to be a bazillionaire from his writing. You know,
Yeah, well, that better hurry up.
Yeah. I'm somebody who recognizes that I'm about as rich as I'm ever going to be. I do the publishing because I love doing it. I love sharing great work, getting unknown authors in a book right next to David Gerald, because I can still remember my first sale. I was in a book as right next to Harry Turtledove, and he sent me a nice note about my story that I will always claim as a Harry Turtledove review. Nice story. No, and so this is the publishing in the small press anyway. For most of, from my perspective, is about the joy of doing things we love, helping people who love doing it get some exposure, and because nobody is going to get rich on selling a 3,000 word short story for 10 cents a word.
Right.
I mean, it's nice, but
Well, I'm like you, Bob. I feel like I'm as rich as I'll ever be, and as long as I can uh, get by selling prints and doing Patreon and going to the occasional convention, and maybe I get 2 commissions a year from book covers. In the meantime, I'm doing what I want to do. I'm writing my book. I'm illustrating my stories. I'm I'm doing what I did to entertain myself when I was a kid, and it only took like 50 years to get back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing what we love to do. We're definitely not getting rich over it. It's just something that we love to do, and we've become good at it.
Right.
What I used to say about running a bookstore was it's a terrible way to make a living and a great way to make a life.
yeah.
Right.
Welcome to science fiction, small press, or art. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I can still remember the first Jeff Sturgeon piece of art I bought that was Jeff Sturgeon and Alan Clark had done together. There we were at the auction. I was getting this at a fair and equitable price.
It was a good price.
And then I'm sitting next to a woman, and the auctioneer is in the going, and she interrupts him before the gone.
Mhm.
And I won't say who was sitting behind me, Jeff and Alan, if he was here, who thought that was the funniest thing they had ever seen. So what you need to do if you're going to make money as an artist is arrange to have 1 or 2 of those people at every art auction at every con that just interrupt with a question that's good for the art right before the price is gone. But here's the bright side. I still got that art hanging on my wall today,
You still got
even
it.
if
Yeah.
it cost me $200 more as a result of that little interruption. But I think that that might have bought you a paintbrush at some point.
Probably. And she owed me a favor. So.
But hey, that's my favorite Jeff Sturgeon story. The I only have one for Todd, and that was where I looked over the first time I ever saw anybody using an iPad to make art. And I'm looking over, or some little computer like us, and I'm looking over. Huh?
It wasn't me if it was an iPad. I may have.
Well, I don't know an iPad.
I may have had a laptop on a Wacom tablet at a show once.
But doing the pixel by pixel work, and it was like, damn, that's got to take a lot of patience.
I don't know.
But,
I don't know if that was me.
If it wasn't you, it was probably somebody else. But I always thought
it was Paul Surratt.
Huh?
It was Surratt.
Surratt.
Pixel by pixel. That's how he did it.
Yeah. He painted that famous park painting on an iPad.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about pixel by pixel being in the computer game business, having producers come over and stare over your shoulder and can you move that pixel over there?
Oh my God.
You want to strangle them?
Hey, all I know is you guys were great to have on board, and it's good to see people that you enjoy their company. And I'm going to give a call out to Brenda Cooper, who stuck with us through this whole thing, because you know what? Brenda is just one of the most unique and favorite writers of mine. I don't care if it's the work she did with Building Harlequin's Moon which, by the way, is a very underrated book because I loved it. And
she's one of my dearest friends and is one of the authors in my book, The Last Cities of Earth. She's a great writer.
Oh yeah, she is brilliant. And I just say thanks for being here, Brenda, and all y'all too. So if there's nothing left to be said, I'm going to push the button.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for being here.
Okay.